HULLCITY. That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Mike. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It's a bit of a roller coaster of emotions at the moment with City. You kind of last week I was sitting here with Dan talking about 2 wins on the bounce and everything sort of on the up, and you come back to earth with a 3-1 loss against West Brom. I mean, albeit it's a West Brom side who are sort of up there challenging in the same sort of realm as us, I suppose. But yeah, what did you make of the performance and the outcome?
I mean, it's obviously not an outcome that we wanted, but I have a feeling it was the outcome we may have needed. I think we do really well to get caught up once we've had 2 wins in a row. I think we assume that we should be pushing. I mean, we should be pushing for top 6 this season, and I think we're in good stead to do that at the moment. But I think it showed us that even the smallest bit of sloppiness and lack of concentration or loss of concentration can be critical when you're trying to fight for a promotion place or a place in the playoffs. And I think the first goal is evidence of that. We just switched off, and it just kind of felt like that for the rest of the game, at least for like the second half of the second half. So we had moments of hope. We had moments of promise, and I think probably Delap had a great game. Coyle had a great game. So there was definitely individual performances that took over. But I think as a whole, not the best result. And I'm hoping we go to a Huddersfield side that are struggling for a win. So I think it's a good game for us to back up after a loss at West Brom.
And you touched on there, I mean, the first goal being that lapse in judgment. My concern with that sort of goal, and I think there's been a lot of discussion around, playing out from the back versus playing around at the back and, risk-free versus taking those sorts of risks. My concern is that it always seems to be Seri that is at fault for those sorts of goals or goal opportunities. And look, that could be because he's sort of that first trigger option out from the keeper. But I just, you don't often, or you rarely see, like, I know there was actually an incident in this game where Morton got caught on the ball, which I actually think was more down to Allsop's distribution than Morton necessarily. But is there a concern from you about, obviously we saw Connolly against Stoke having a go at Seri for dawdling on the ball towards half time. Is there a bit of a concern? It's almost more of a Seri issue potentially rather than a system issue.
I don't necessarily think it's a Seri issue. I mean, he has been at fault the last few times, and I made a note to say that this was not the first time that Seri had been caught lacking. You can see he just does not look up, and I think he's trying to pass it to Jones, and it's just nowhere near him.
And it's like he's actually facing Wallace. It's not as if it's a blind pass. Like, that's what.
Yes, I'm surprised as to why he didn't see him, which clearly means he was looking down. At the same time, that can be cleared long by Allsop. If every player in front of you is under pressure, and it's not like Seri wasn't under pressure, he had a man incoming. Clear the ball. There's no harm in it. I understand that we want this methodology of playing from the back, and it does work. We've seen it work really well, and we've seen us control possession and move our way up to the final third. But I think there are times where it calls for just a boot up, just to reset. It doesn't need to be 100% of the time playing out of the back. Like, even if we do lose possession, at least we can get back into a formation and settle down a bit easier, especially when it's really early on in the game. So it's hard to say if it's a Seri issue. I don't necessarily think it is. I think, as you said, he's the one that will pick up the ball and play that role as that like playmaker from the back, almost like a CDM or fill in CB sometimes. So he's more prone to make that error than anyone else on the team, which is why it looks like it's a him problem.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting if there are games where he misses out and it's a Traore or when he's back maybe a Slater or someone filling that role, how they sort of defer in that role. But I suppose that's sort of just one to watch out for, I suppose. Another player who sort of split opinions and certainly splits opinions between us is Mr. Scott Twine on the left wing, who put in you got to say put in a great ball for Coyle for that goal to equalise, but sort of a split opinion, I suppose, on his impact before that in the game and I suppose after it as well.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of hype around Twine.
Do you think that sort of counts against him?
100%, yeah. And this free kick maestro, and I air quote that because I think it's I don't think he's scored. I mean, he hasn't, obviously, but they just haven't been great. I made a note to call out that the only time that Twine runs at a defender and tries to take them on, he assists. So often in the game, before that point, he picks up the ball and passes backwards immediately. Or he'll hold it, look for a run, nothing will be there, and he'll pass back to Greaves or someone in midfield. I think that tactic of attacking the player, going for him, and then trying to like use his fancy feet, which sure he did show us that he had, but if he can do that consistently game in, game out, he's going to change my mind about what I think about him.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping for him in a similar sort of way to the goal for Philogene against Birmingham of giving them the confidence in their ability that I think now that he's got a return, like he's got an assist, hopefully that gives him a bit more confidence in his ability. Because I think before now, he's sort of almost been in his own head about overthinking goals or opportunities to score or assist. That now that something's finally fallen his way, hopefully that sort of kickstarts his City journey.
I hope so. I can't remember if it was last game or the game before where he essentially had a one-on-one and he went for the pen as opposed to
Birmingham. Yeah.
That shows me a player that has no confidence. When you're trying to milk a pen and you're not trying to put it away, that's a concern for me. And hopefully this is a step in the right direction, because when we've got Philogene out, Twine's the option on the wing. Where I think you and I were chatting beforehand, we don't really have that many, so being able to rely on someone like Twine is really important when a star player like Philogene's out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess the other sort of attacking option or the outlet that we sort of end up relying on is Delap up front, who you did mention. I thought he did have a good game. My only concern that's sort of starting to creep into Delap's game is and it's probably actually not really any fault of his own. It's probably just the fact that he has no other options around him. But he does seem to lose his feet quite regularly, where I think he's trying to buy a free kick a lot of the time, because I think his thinking is probably that he's pushed his way, he's worked his way up the field to a really promising area, then has no support. So he'll sort of drive at the defender and try and draw a foul, which quite often the referee doesn't end up paying. I don't know if it's because the ref just thinks he's gone down too easily, or if he just sees it as a coming together of the two of them. I'm not too sure. I mean, quite often I actually do think there's a foul there, and it's not like, I mean, I remember early in the season a couple of penalty shouts that didn't really get given for him in a similar sort of manner. But it is something that's concerning is probably the wrong word, but I wouldn't want to see his first instinct to be, I'm going to go down, rather than I'm going to try and get a shot away. So I think that's probably something to watch out for as well.
I don't know if it has been. I mean, I feel the majority of the time he's trying to take on defenders and he'll get a shot away or he'll put a ball through. I mean, his ball for Twine was unreal. It was a great ball. I do get what you mean, and it might be something to look out for, but I think the way he's playing at the moment and the chances he's created and just being able to have someone like him up front that we know he can get the ball to and either hold it up or do something with it, I think has been really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously on our goal itself, Coyle, probably again one of his better games for the season. I thought that the mask that he's been having to wear has sort of hampered his ability somewhat, but really put in a shift against West Brom. Great finish for the goal, and also a few really sort of goal-saving tackles through the game as well. Just an all-round great performance.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more that can be said. I think he had one of his better games this season and deserves the goal there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess in the second half, I mean, Rosenia talked post-match about, we had a little, I wouldn't even call it dominance. We sort of went toe-to-toe with them just after halftime when we were back on level pegging. And then we just kind of get undone. And, in the first half, I actually thought Greaves had a really good game and he was looking really dependable at left back. And then I don't know if it was fitness. I don't know if it was just, the conditions and everything that, he obviously slips over for the second goal that they score. So he sort of pulled out of shape in that sense. But there was a lot of space being left on that left-hand side from our perspective a couple of times for West Brom. And once that second goal went in, heads dropped a little bit. And then, probably poor positioning from Vaughan for the third. And that's sort of game over.
Yeah, I don't know if that's poor positioning from Vaughan or just incredible inexperience. Like you can see Jones have a massive go at I'm pretty sure it's him and Seri, because both have dived in. Greaves, I rewatched it just then, and Greaves has gone. I feel like he's almost gone back to that centre back positioning for that second goal. That being said, he had to cover a lot of space. Like we've been done on that left side. There was so much room. I don't know if Josh Greaves is at fault because I think McLaughlin was also nowhere to be seen. But yeah, Vaughan, all I've put down is incredibly poor for that third goal. And I feel really bad for him given his inexperience and how young he is, and to be put into a position where we're 2-1 down and almost, hey, you're quick, go. It just shows that I think he needs to do a bit more work on defending, and rightfully so. Jones blasts him for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, look, it's, what is it, his first minutes back since his injury earlier in the season, and it's a pretty tough sort of context to come back into a game. It's not like we're 2-0 up and coasting and you're getting a few minutes in the legs. It's, teeming rain, 2-1 down away from home at a top 6 rival, and you're being expected, you're just sort of thrown into the thick of it. It is a really tough environment from that sense. So I do cut him a little bit of slack there, but yeah, I agree that it's he can sort of see it as a really good learning experience. As you say, Jones blasting him for the mistake, like he'll learn from that, and you hope that that puts him in good stead going forward. But a really unfortunate one for him. Injuries sort of starting to pile up as well. Rosenia mentioned, he would have thrown Connolly on late in the game, but he had a sort of recurrence of his toe injury. So you look at the fact, and Cynic as well, the morning of the game has his knee lock up, so he couldn't make the match day squad either. So you kind of get Ali thrown in as well towards the end. Tufan as well, sort of, I think it was his first start back from injury as well. A few players just looking a bit rusty, so you'd sort of hope maybe they'll be better for the run, but we certainly need them up to speed pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think this is a situation that we almost run into every season. I'd like to think that this season we're a bit more prepared. I think we do have a bit more depth than we have had historically. But yeah, it'd be nice to see some of those injuries come back. I think Slater's looking like he's coming back in December. Hopefully Philo's back for next game. I think we were looking at Lokilo's getting a scan, so we're not really sure. It's tough.
Yeah. So fingers crossed for the Huddersfield game, which we'll touch on in a bit of time. But look, before we move on from the game, I'll grab your votes for this one.
So I go 3 for Coyle, 2 for Delat, 1 for Twine.
Oh, I thought you. I didn't think you'd give your boo boy a vote there. But I've gone the same.
I think he deserved 1 for the assist.
Yeah, got the assist. I thought. Look, I think as you sort of said at the start, he came in with a lot of hype, which I think is definitely making it a harsher grading for him, because you sort of compare it perhaps to someone like a Lokilo who came in with no hype whatsoever, and I think he's doing quite well as well. But it is sort of, I guess, interesting when you've got that expectation on you, how much more is expected. As you say, I mean, look, he came in with a reputation with the free kick, so if he can bury one in the top corner, all of a sudden it probably changes the perspective on him. But until then, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully this assist sort of kickstarts his City career from here. Okay, well, speaking of Connolly, there was a bit of off-field news during the week in terms of contract offers or contract discussions being started. Firstly, with Connolly, looking to extend his contract because, of course, it's just a 12-month deal at this stage. And then the manager, Liam Rosenia, as well, looking at getting an extended deal because apparently there's a bit of interest in him from other parties. I think they said his current deal runs till 2025 with a club option for another year. So you sort of think that's already, what's that, like a 3-year deal, or essentially a 4-year deal. If they're looking to make that a longer deal, it's a real show of faith in him.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we'll touch on Connolly. I'd love to have him hang around. I think, why being said, depending on if we get promoted or not, I think it's a different story. But if I almost feel like we need another season in the championship with this squad. But if we do stay in the championship, having him around, I think, has been really great. I mean, I think he's on 5 goals this season so far, and he's been injured as well. So he's someone I would definitely want to keep around, especially given he just runs till he can't anymore. I think he just shows that he's committed to it. And yeah, Rosie, having Rosie around, I think is great for our long-term vision. I think he's instilled some form of confidence in the players that I don't think we've had previous managers do, or to the same level. Like, he kind of reminds me of Phil Brown from an inspiration perspective, and selfishly having lost Corica at Sydney FC with someone that's got strong ties with them, it's nice to have a former player, in charge of the club or in charge of the team going forward. So I think if we can lock him down, that's good. But I guess it also shows that, if there's interest from other clubs, that he's doing something right, and other clubs are recognizing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I said in our preseason predictions that my worry would mainly be Brighton seems the most obvious threat, where if De Zerbi gets picked off by Man City or whoever, whether it's the end of this season, whether it's next season, whatever it might be, that Rosenior sort of fits the bill of quite a natural successor there in terms of the philosophy. Obviously, that has ties to that club as well. So tying him down to a longer deal, where presumably you add in a more lucrative sort of buyout option or clause or whatever in his contract as well, just sort of protects the club and gives Rosenior the security at the same time. So it's sort of a win-win for all parties if that can be achieved. So that would be great news. Okay, well, we'll move on then. We've got our player review of the week, Ozan Tufan, who we've touched on a little bit in that review of the West Brom game. It surprised me a little bit when I was looking up these stats it'll be his 50th appearance this weekend against Huddersfield. So I thought it was an appropriate time to cover him. 12 goals as well, which, I suppose makes sense when you think, obviously takes a couple of penalties, which probably helps pad the numbers a little bit. But it's actually quite a reasonably prolific spell for him at City. So he came in with sort of that mixed reviews from, well, not really even mixed, from Watford, that it was pretty negative his time there, but mixed opinions on how he'd fit in at City. And you have to say it's been broadly a success.
Yeah, I think when he first joined, there were a lot of concerns about his fitness. I think when he joined, he looked, I don't mean this in any rude way, he did look a bit bigger than most players. So I think this season's off season, prior to this season starting, we could tell that a lot of work was put in. I think during preseason and the first few games of this season, he looked a lot fitter and he was able to run around a lot more before he got injured. He's on 4 goals this season so far. So a third of his goals have come from, what was it? I don't know, let's say 7 to 8 appearances this season. Yeah. So I think if you had asked me what I thought about him last season, my vote would be very different to what it is now. My only concern is that he seems like a player that if he doesn't contribute to the team for a few weeks, he loses that motivation really quickly. And I think that's probably why he was a bit slow or lackluster this weekend, which was kind of disappointing to see, because you'd think, first start back from injury, prove yourself or pick up that form. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit of time from injury to get back to where you were. But look, I think all in all, probably a good signing. Would I pay 2.5 for him again? Maybe not. If we were buying him in the form he's in, like now in this season pre-injury, yes. If we're taking last season into account, no. But I think he's a great addition to have to the team.
Yeah, we were sort of talking before the episode about the fees paid for Ali and Cynic, sort of combined being in the region of about 4.5 million. You throw Tufan in, because of course they were all bought in the same summer. Yeah. You're probably looking at about a 6-7 million outlay for the three of them. And you sort of think only really Tufan of the three has worked out. I think, as you say, like the form that he's shown at the start of this season was really promising. I think it's interesting because at the start of the season, before Philogene joined, he was almost our main man up forward, in the sense that, everything was sort of going through him. He got the hat trick against Sheff Wednesday, things like that. And as you say, I think it's a good point that maybe he doesn't really like being that sort of peripheral man. He likes being the main man. So it will be interesting to see how he sort of links up with Philogene when he's back in the team. When you've got Delap running the lines at the front as well. It'll be interesting to see where Tufan fits in, because you've got, guys like Traore, Twine and stuff as well to sort of fit into the same team potentially. So it does make it a bit interesting.
And Connolly.
Yeah. So, look, I think, as you say, I think broadly it's been a success. I think the fee itself, when you sort of, 2.5 million or something, you sort of think, well, it's half a Philogene. I guess that actually it's probably unfair, because I think that just reflects what a steal Philogene was more than anything. But 2.5 million, I suppose it's not too bad for 12 goals from him already from just under 50 appearances is pretty good to see. Okay, well, we'll round things off then. We'll talk Huddersfield, who we play this weekend at home. I haven't actually seen what ticket sales are like for this one, but I'm hoping it's another bumper crowd. It's, essentially it's a Yorkshire derby at home, so should be a great fixture. It's a really good opportunity to bounce back. I think, if you suddenly make it 3 wins in 4, that suddenly looks a whole lot better than 2 wins and 2 losses, or sort of 7 points in 4 games sort of thing. So how are you feeling heading into this one?
I'm quietly optimistic given my history with predictions. So I'm always cautious, but they've won one in what, like 8. They're really struggling, and they've conceded like 4 goals twice in their last 3 games. I mean, they had a draw against Watford last game, but they're not as strong as I thought they would be this season. And I think now is as I said when we started talking, now is a great time for us to play them after the result that we had at West Brom. I think this is the result that should give us confidence going into the top 6. With that being said, anything can happen, right? We go in really confident, and then 15 minutes in, we pass the ball to them and they score.
I was surprised that we haven't actually beaten them in, I think it's on like 7 games. Where was it? Yeah, 7 fixtures. The last one was in 2015. So they're a bit of a bogey side in that sense. I remember we played them last season when they were in pretty similarly bad form. Would it have been, I don't even think it was Warnock at that stage. I think it was the previous manager who was pretty awful for them, where they shocked us with that 2-0 win at their place when Michael Hellick got a goal, and I think Coyle scored an own goal in that fixture. So, we don't need too many reminders of the fact that they can be a danger game, and it's not in the bag until we've got the 3 points and the ref blows the full-time whistle. So you'd hope in front of the home crowd, if everyone can stay positive and support the team and really get behind them, it presents a really great opportunity to, as you say, I mean, for a side that's conceding as many goals as they are, you'd love to see sort of a 3 or a 4-0 win, just to unleash the confidence of the team. And maybe, if it's a Twine getting on the score sheet, or Philogene getting a couple, or something, Jalap getting a brace or something like that, just a big win to sort of just boost that confidence for the players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the game for it. I hope Philo's back for this game, but if anything, I really think Twine takes this game on and gets his goal.
Yeah, hopefully. And then, so in that being said, do you have any changes you'd make to the lineup? I suppose, obviously, Philogene to come back in.
Yeah, I'd put Philo back in, maybe drop Tufan. I would probably move Twine more central so that we can have Philo on the wing, if he's back, that is. Otherwise, I can't. I know we said it. I know you said it before the call that you lost confidence in Ali, but I think that this is maybe a game that Ali needs. There's no better time than to play a team that's just above the relegation zone, when a win for us really starts putting distance between the top half and the bottom half. Yeah. So I think if he does get a solid 30-40 minute run out, there might be a boost to his confidence.
Yeah, and I think similar to the comment I made about Vaughan for the West Brom game, I think this is a great game to hopefully give him 20 minutes or something like that at the end of the game as well. This is much, I suspect in the last game you would have seen Connolly come on instead of Vaughan if Connolly had been fit. I think this game is much more sensible for Vaughan to get some minutes and kind of get back into the rhythm of things. So hopefully he gets a chance in this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when summer comes around, or is it winter, whenever January comes around, I wouldn't mind seeing Vaughan loaned out just so that he can get really good game time. I think that's going to give him more confidence and turn him into a better player than being on the fringes, or at least playing on under 21s. I think he might be.
Yeah, I actually, because obviously the Irish season's just finished, and so we had, it was Harry Wood, and name has escaped me of the other guy that was there, but a couple of guys, Jarvis, who both had really successful spells at Shelbourne. I wonder if when their season starts again, which I presume must be after January or February sort of thing, whether we do send like a Harry Vaughan to there. I mean, I don't know if that levels almost too low for him. No disrespect to the Irish League. I don't have enough perspective of it to know where it really fits in compared to, say, a League One or a League Two.
Yeah.
But when it's a club that we have a bit more control over, in that sense that he might get a bit more game time, and obviously having had those successful loans already, there's a bit more confidence that we're going to be sending them players that can actually contribute. That might be a good option for him, just to get that, as you say, get those consistent minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wouldn't mind seeing him in a League One team.
Yeah, for sure. And so then for this game, score prediction for it?
5-0.
5-0. Wow.
Yeah.
Because of course, your first few appearances on the podcast was always a little bit of a curse. There was a couple of pretty poor performances after, but you have broken the curse now. So what better way to underline that than nice 5-0 win would be good. Exactly. So I'll back that as well. Hopefully we can. I think we've been saying for weeks on the podcast, I think these performances have been good without the outcome necessarily in the games. So you just need this sort of one resounding win to really sort of see it all come together and get that momentum really going. So, a nice big win against Huddersfield would be good. Absolutely.
It will be.
For sure. Well, look, thank you for joining for this one, Mike.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And thanks everyone for listening in. Hopefully we are back here next week talking a resounding win over Huddersfield and brushing away all the memories of that West Brom game. But until this time next week, come on, City.